Now that we have a good understanding of how to use a try-catch block in order to capture an error and handle that error so that our code doesn't blow up, as well as understanding how to use the throw statement in order to throw an error when we have an exceptional case that we want to handle, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on and talk about how do we create more specific errors to our application. So errors that are custom to our application that we can identify, as well as providing more human readable messages that we can print out to users so that users know what happened and what they need to do in order to fix the problem. In our last example that we created when we learned about our try-catch, we throw an error, and that error we kind of use a cryptic code called divide by zero. And it's really more of a name of an error than it is a message to the user. And what happens here is when we divide by zero and we execute the script, yes, our script doesn't blow up, but the divide by zero error name doesn't really provide the user with much context, information, or instruction as to what they need to do. And if we went ahead and did this, and instead of giving it an error name, we did something like an attempt was made to divide a number by zero. This is not allowed. If we did that, we might have a really good message. Let's go ahead and save that and execute it. We might have a really good message that goes out to the user, but deciding what error actually came in through our catch block will be really hard to determine because we've got this massive string that makes it really hard to identify the error that came through and perhaps do something as a result of a different type of error coming in. Now, that might sound a little confusing, so let's kind of modify our example here. Let's take this string we have right here, let's go ahead and copy it, and then let's put back our divide by zero name of the error. And then let's say that if num1 is equal to 0, we also don't want anybody to do that. So let's do a throw, and let's say 0 divided by something. And let's call this an error. Let's add error to the end of this one as well, so we know it's an error. And we're going to go ahead and throw this error as well. And so if we execute our code now, because we don't want them to divide by 0, but we also don't want to divide something by 0, let's see what happens. We execute it and we're dividing by 0. We get back a divide by 0 error. And then if we change this to a 5, and then we have our numerator be 0, and then we execute it, we end up with a num1 is not defined error. So num1, oops, I put an E on there, so let's fix that really quick. Let's run it again. Now we get a 0 divided by something error. Now these messages are not very useful, and based on what happened, we may want to provide the user with some other message or instructions that are more human readable. In other words, we want to provide information to the user that is friendly for the user. So what we can do, an easy fix for this, is instead of throwing simply a string as our error, what we can do is we can throw our own objects as an error. And we can provide within those objects any properties with values that we want. In this case, we've got a name of our error, and then we can also provide a human readable message that we may want to provide to our user. So here, an attempt was made to divide a number by 0. This is not allowed. So that makes a really good human readable message that we can present to our user. And then on this one, let's go ahead and add the name, and we'll make this our name value. And then we'll also provide a message on this error object, and we'll say An attempt was made to divide 0 by a number. This is not allowed. So now we've got ourselves some good messages that tell us why this particular error happened. And we're still capturing that error. And now if we run this, we should see that we have an object that we got back. And in this case, we're trying to divide 0 by a number, so we get a 0 divided by something error object. And if we were to expand that object, we just see we've got a name and a message property on it. What this allows us to do is, instead of console.logging the error, which before just gave us the name of the error, we can actually go ahead and provide the custom message that belongs to that error to our user. And when we run it, now the user gets a human readable message that pretty much tells them why the error happened. So if we go ahead and change this back to a 10, change this to a 0, and we execute it, we'll see that we get the message for the other one. An attempt was made to divide a number by 0. So now we're handling both of these exceptional cases, and we're providing an error object with a message that we can actually provide to the user that says why the error happened. Now, why did we provide a name on this error object? Well, the reason why is what we can do is, after we've presented the error message to the user, what we can do is, based on the error type that we got back, we can go ahead and present some instructions to the user. So the message tells us why the error happened, and now we can go ahead and, if it is a particular error message, so if we say error, oops, I'm not coding, let's do error.name, if it is equal to this particular error type, then we're going to go ahead and provide some very specific instructions for the user. So if it is a divide by 0 error, then we're going to do a console.log, and we are going to tell the user that they need to re-enter the divisor, and it has to be something greater than 0. So please provide a divisor that is greater than 0. So that gives them instructions. So let's go ahead and run our code. We get an attempt was made to divide a number by 0. This is not allowed. Please provide a divisor that is greater than 0. And then we can also handle our other error type, which is this 0 divided by something error. We can come down here and we can say if the error let's just do an else if. That way we don't have to worry about this one executing also. Let's do else if error.name is equal to 0 divided by something. Then we're going to go ahead and do a console.log, and we're going to give them instructions. Please provide a numerator that is greater than 0. All right, so we got our divisor and our numerator. I think I'm using the right terms there. Divisor and numerator. And then let's go ahead and let's change this to a 0. Oh, now we got both error types. Let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. An attempt was made to divide a number by 0. This is not allowed. Please provide a divisor that is greater than 0. Well, we'll notice that we don't actually get the second error message, and that is because we have thrown an error right here, which actually stops the rest of the code in the function from executing. In other words, throws this error and stops the function from executing and returns back to the caller, which is right here, with the error. And because an error was thrown, it's caught by the catch block, and now we have a reference to that error. So since we did both zeros, whichever error gets thrown first will be the error that terminates this function from continuing its execution. In this case, it's the first one. So let's go ahead and change this back to 0, and then let's change this to a 5. Let's execute it. Now we see an attempt was made to divide 0 by a number. This is not allowed. And so since this first one didn't execute, it continued to move on. This executed. Because it was 0, this error was thrown, so this never happens. Because this is thrown, we get that back in our try block as a result of this call. We catch it in the catch block as our error. We print out the message, and then because it is this particular error type, we go ahead and provide the custom instructions to our user based on that type of error. This is a pretty simple way of throwing specific errors based on a condition, an exceptional condition that we have in our code. And then within our catch block, this is an easy way of identifying the type of error that is being thrown and then providing custom instructions or messages to the user based on this. Now, if this script wasn't just running on Node, which is what we've been doing right now, we've been running it locally against our Node.js execution environment. If we were pulling this into an HTML file and running it in the browser, we would probably be printing out these messages directly onto the HTML page in some form of an error control on our HTML page and then showing that error. Hopefully this shows you how you can actually throw objects as errors and actually provide more details about the specific error that has occurred in your code. A lot of the errors that come through these external factors, or ones that we receive back from external sources due to asynchronous calls to get files or call a web server, we're going to get back complex errors which are objects and will have a ton more properties than just the name and message that we can actually look at. When we get back like an HTTP error from a asynchronous call using the XML HTTP request object, we're going to get back like the HTTP status code as well as other information on top of just the type of error and the message. Hopefully this helps you understand how we can do custom errors. This isn't the only way of doing custom errors. In the latest version of JavaScript, such as the ES 2015 and newer syntax that you have been provided, we can actually, so ES6 provides classes, so we could actually create custom classes that we can extend from error. But being that we have not covered that yet, and we're not going to get to that until later on as we learn JavaScript, we're going to stick with this basic object throwing syntax for throwing an error in our applications until we get more advanced and learn some more advanced JavaScript.